and then we're going to put it up live on Facebook here. So just give me a moment.
Oh,
So there we are. Got it. Yeah, live streaming. So this is Eva. So I'm saying welcome to Heart to Heart with Eva, and my special guest for today is Karen Miller. Welcome, Karen.
hi, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure that you want to be here. Um, to just dive right into it, you are a Reiki healer.
Yeah, I am. I have been practicing Reiki now since I believe it was about 1996 when I first took level one. And then, for years I used it and then I kind of put it aside for a little bit. And then I came back to it after, having some life events that really felt like I needed that kind of support. And then I pursued becoming a Reiki master in 2017. So yeah, I love this. I love the Reiki. I love the work.
Yeah, I can totally get that. I actually did dive in and checked your Facebook page and catched up a little bit about you. And there are so many things that are similar to my own life events. I also started Reiki in the 90s and took a break and are now back in the energies again. So and I know that you love animals.
I
And
do. Yeah. I have many of my own, in fact. Right now, the count is two dogs, four cats, three horses, and 15 chickens.
oh
So
my.
that's quite a few.
You are so full booked right now. So,
Yeah, I do. I absolutely love them. And I live in this really rural section of Pennsylvania. So I also have a lot of wildlife, hereabouts. There's, many deer and bear. And yesterday there was a snake in my tack room, that kind of thing.
oh,
Yeah, I don't love that, but we just caught him and got him out of there. It was non-venomous variety. So, a couple of years ago, we actually had a snake somehow find its way into the house. Didn't love that either. It was like a 4 foot long black snake, and again, non-venomous, but still don't love that. So yeah, we have quite a menagerie of domestic animals, but then we also have, quite a different variety of wild animals locally.
well, you are totally engaged with the animal life all around you. I am not close to that animal life at all. Though my cat accidentally takes some snakes with him when he comes inside on during summer times, uh, but he has luckily not doing this summer. So yeah, bless his soul. Uh, I first got in touch with you through Facebook for not so long ago, and so I actually doesn't know so much about you, but I do know that you are a Reiki healer, and I do know that you have been practicing it for since the 90s. I also know that you have two different other Facebook pages, and one of them are Shift Kitchen. I love that name. Balance for body, mind, and spirit. So let's start talking about that.
Okay, well, Shift Kitchen was something that came around sort of by accident. About a decade ago, I was diagnosed with a ton of food allergies. And all of a sudden, everything that I was able to eat was, it went from a very big list to a very little list. And I had to avoid a lot of the, common ordinary food that I had been eating, for my whole life, and it was causing a respiratory problem. Like I could not breathe. So
Oh,
it was pretty serious. And so I had to figure out how to like eat all over again. And it put a lot of focus on my kitchen, which is one of the ways that Shift Kitchen got its name. I realized on that journey that the kitchen became like my war room. It really was a center of a lot of very important decisions that I was making. And the things that happened in my kitchen were like a pebble dropped into a pond, and then, the circles spread outward into the rest of my life. And I think that that pebble in a pond is kind of like the work that I do with Reiki and, the other things that I offer too. It's kind of like that. It's like a pebble dropped into a pond, and it just kind of spreads outward, in ever increasing size circles. So anyway, the shift kitchen part of it then, of course, it caused a lot of shift in my life. And it started in my kitchen. But then there's also the aspect of honoring our ancestors. We have, I'm sure you do too, uh, recipes that have been passed down from generation to generation that we're still enjoying today. And some of the best memories that I have are, baking in the kitchen with my grandmother. She's been gone now for, over 20 years, but it's still one of my favorite childhood memories. So there's that. And then there's the elements. The kitchen kind of represents all of the elements. And coming from a, kind of a pagan witchy background, that matters to me, that I'm honoring my ancestors and the elements too. So that's kind of how Shift Kitchen got its name, and sort of how it came to be. But it has evolved over time to include things that are not related to food. It's Reiki, and it's working with the moon and nature's wisdom, those sorts of things now. And I think of it as ancient wisdom for modern living,
Mm.
right? We're kind of reimagining the ways of our grandmothers and applying it to our very modern lives.
That's so interesting, um, because lately it has been a lot of focusing on the food and what you are digesting within yourself, and it's so aligned with the ascension processes too. And I started to think the other day, because I have had a period myself where have been eating fast food, and I hadn't got so much time, so, to cook. So, but I was standing in the kitchen and actually prepared a real meal like I did earlier in the days. And the thought just popped in like, oh, this is nice. It's so nice to be standing there, be aware of what you are doing, and be within every process of the cooking. Uh, and it also popped into me like, you know, you should be in a good mood when you're preparing your meal, because that is actually sending energies. There will be a good meal when you have your heart and intention poured into whatever you are doing. And that is actually, and now I didn't make the connection, but when you said it turned out, the shift kitchen turned out to evolve into healing and other things that are so, in line with each other.
Yeah, they really are. I think that our food and the choices that we make in our food is like a foundational thing for the rest of what we do, not just with our everyday lives, but also like in our spirituality. Because, like you said, preparing a meal can be a very uplifting experience. I find when I'm chopping vegetables and doing those things, now I'm obviously paying attention so that I don't, inadvertently injure myself, but I find it very zen, right? Same with cleaning my house. I find that very zen, getting rid of those old stale energies and bringing in this wonderful new energy. And when I was younger, I thought that cleaning and cooking were like torture. I thought that was something that I should never do. Other people should do it. I kind of fancied myself as being a career woman, which I always worked. I always had full-time jobs, and I was a single mom. So, my time was kind of limited, right? So I tried to cut all the corners that I could. And, the reality is that my reliance on processed food was probably part of what created the allergy issues that I eventually ended up with.
Mm.
So I'm now so aware of the healthy element that our food choices actually, are responsible for.
Mm.
So I love that you felt like that when you were in your kitchen making yourself a meal. I love that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of new insights or old insights popping into all of our heads right now in these times. But it's good to be aware of what one are doing. Um, there was something I wanted to ask you about this um, food. Are you like sharing those recipes on the internet too, or do you have
I have
your
shared some. It is, what I've been doing is sharing recipes that are, whole food, home cooked kind of stuff. The focus has shifted a little bit away from food for me, in that I originally thought that food would be a large part of what I offered other people. Now it's kind of like it's sort of a side part, although I still advocate for, whole foods and a holistic lifestyle, because I think that that's so important in supporting everything else that you want to do, whether you want to be a Reiki person or whether you want to be, on a spiritual path of some kind, whatever it is, I think that that food really supports that. And I encourage all of my Reiki students in particular to really pay attention to what they're putting into their bodies, because that clean food creates, in my mind anyway, clean energy, right? It kind of helps you to do what you do. So I don't do a lot with the food, but I do share some recipes, and most of them are family favorites.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. This is such a central role in our lives, and we are so sometimes disrespecting the food that we are putting in into it, digesting, and I'm getting more and more aware of it too. It's not that I doesn't know about it, but it's like, you know, I haven't made a choice to eat proper food because I enjoy other food stuff. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
hard.
but I can
It,
actually sense that as the time flies by and the higher energies are pouring in, my body is actually starting to crave another spectra of food. And that is very interesting. So I like the
yeah.
fact that you are talking about the impact of the food, how it affects our bodies.
Yeah, it really is true. And I think what happens, like for me, back when I was first diagnosed with all these food allergies, I was literally in a state of panic. Medicine couldn't help me with, what was I supposed to eat. I saw a nutritionist. That wasn't really very much help. She just kind of looked at my list of food, which it was like 30 different things that I had to avoid. That is a lot.
Wow. Mm.
And so she said, "Oh, you'll be fine. You still have enough choices. You'll be fine." I'm like, "What?" I really wanted this help, right? So I had to figure it out on my own. And so I started experimenting in the kitchen, and I soon found that the only thing that I could really do was to cook my own food. If I made everything from scratch, I was fine. And those first few trips to the grocery store, they required me to read every food label, which, here's a tip for anybody who wants to eat a little cleaner. If you're eating anything that has an ingredient label, make sure you read it and know what's on it. There are things in food that you would just not imagine. Like, for example, there's soy in canned tuna. Why is there soy in tuna? That's,
Good
it
question.
was one of the things I had to avoid. So I became very aware, of soy in different things. So it took me hours to get through the grocery store when I first started, this new way of eating. And then I finally realized that if I just went around the outside and picked up the fresh things that I needed, it would, obviously work out a lot better. And if I just left all the processed food in the grocery store, I would be so much better off. And I think that, there's this principle of, putting living plants into your body, that living energy, as opposed to the dead energy, which would be things like meat and so forth. And I think that for most of us, we have to find a balance between those things. And it takes a little experimenting. Experimenting
Sure
is
it
definitely
does.
something I
Sure does.
encourage. Yeah.
And it's living energy, as you said, and that is also what is so present these times, that the energy is getting more living for all of us. There are new levels entering, and as the awareness grows, you'll be more sensitive to what you are ingesting, and not even by food, it's also by your social lives, what you are getting fed on the social media, the people you are surrounding yourself with. And we mentioned this Reiki healing or healing as a concept just before we went live. And there has been an increasing, um, you know, how should I say it? More and more are getting interested in these, as you said, healing abilities, again the energies, to be a part of the energies. And we have noticed that there are more and more focusing on especially Reiki. So you are a Reiki master teacher,
Mhm.
yes, so in this you also have your classes, right?
I do. I offer online Reiki classes. Right now, levels 1 and 2 are live and ready. They're closed for enrollment until November, but they will reopen in November. Level 3 hasn't yet been launched, mostly because I don't have any students that are yet ready for level 3. I have it all. It just hasn't, made it. Plus, I've been a little on the fence about how I'd like to offer that. I think that anyone who's being called to being a Reiki master might really appreciate more of a live hands-on kind of thing than a, click to buy sort of class or work through it on your own sort of situation. So I've been a little on the fence about that. But I love that we now can use this technology that's available to all of us to connect that way, and what I do is my classes are self-study combined with a live aspect. So my students have access to me, which is something that I saw in other classes that just wasn't there. You would, be able to take the class, but there was, no connection or no contact with your instructor. And I didn't love that. So in what I've offered, I do live Q&A sessions. I have a private Facebook community where students can get together to connect and also access me. And then I do these live Q&As so that, if you need help, you can get it. Or if you just want to share something, your experience or what have you, you can do that too.
So you're always there, so to speak, in some way, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I love being able to do that. It's to me, that's such an important part of it. I've had Reiki masters. I've actually had more than one because I wasn't able to continue with the master that I originally learned with. And I loved being able to make those connections to them. I learned more from them than just Reiki. And I'm hoping that, someday maybe my students will feel that way too.
Well, I actually have two Reiki masters too. I started off with a female, and it was just lovely energies. And as the time continued, I felt like I needed to actually dive into some type of other energy. So I took a Reiki master class for a male, and that brings me back to what I was going to say a bit earlier. There, another thing that are coming alive is the symbols, because when we are doing our symbols in healing, now we are talking Reiki, but when we are using them, they are actually alive. They are vibrating, and sometimes you can see them, and mostly the most of us are feeling the energy. But have you noticed, and this is the question, have you noticed that they have changed a bit in structure and energy lately?
I do know what you mean. Yeah. And it's very interesting to me that, Reiki has really been on quite a journey since, its rediscovery.
Yeah.
It really has changed a lot. I was just actually having this conversation with someone the other day about how it used to be that if you wanted to learn Reiki, you needed to make like a $10,000 investment.
Mm.
And obviously now that has changed. You will find various symbols or various versions of the symbols, I guess I should say.
Mm.
And while there are a lot of similarities in the way that Reiki is taught, since you have that lineage that goes back, now this would be Usui Reiki, to Dr. Usui, most of us have a very similar education. And yet within that, you still find some variety. And I really think that that's the effect that you're kind of talking about. We have it sort of coming and kind of taking its own life on, so to speak, and I think that people are, called to a specific master because that's the thing that they need, even if the Reiki is different than what a different master would teach, right? So you have all these different things, but I think people get exactly what they need. I think they're called to
Oh,
just,
definitely. I think so too. But it's so interesting to know that we are all keeping our own vibrations, and even though the healing is pouring in from another source, and we are not giving from ourselves, there are certain vibrations that I'm as a teacher can hold for another person. So there will be a slightly difference difference there. And I have also noticed, as you said, that the symbols have shifted slightly, but they are the same purpose for it. But I have my reflection when I started to do a healing on a plant here for a couple of days ago is that the vibration of the symbolic that I'm used to use has slightly shifted a bit in energy as it has coming in before. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it with that because now we are getting off topic here. So back to you, dear. Back to you. Um, Moonbeams and Tea is another Facebook page that you have.
yeah, yeah. Moonbeams and Tea is actually my private Facebook community, and then I also have a public page for it. But Moonbeams and Tea community on Facebook is a private group where we focus on working with the moon and nature's wisdom and Reiki, of course. So there's a little bit of all of that going on within the group. And right now, I just started a little tour of the houses of the birth chart for all those folks who are interested in how the moon might move through their chart and what it might mean. We actually have the new moon in Libra today. I
Yeah,
didn't realize when we booked, but yeah, so happy new moon.
the new moon.
Yeah. So that's, Moonbeams and Tea is actually part of the same shiftkitchen.com family. And I don't know if it will ever have its own, website or any of those things, but it is just the Facebook community for right now, and then the public pages on both Facebook and Instagram.
And you mentioned earlier that you had a pagan lineage, so I guess that is coming through in this moonbeam group that you have. Will you let us know more about what kind of pagan lineage you have with you?
Sure. So, it's less about lineage maybe than it is about rediscovery or remembering, maybe is the right way to put it. Um, you know, Years ago, I grew up like almost everyone else that I know, and that is that, it's a largely mainstream religion kind of thing. And we didn't go to church every Sunday or any of those things, but we were definitely, part of that mainstream religion. So, I always felt a little bit lost in that. Like I felt like I needed answers that it couldn't provide. And I was very active in my church actually as a young adult. When my daughter was young, I was on church council and we went all the time and, I was very active. But I was just disenchanted with, not being able to get the answers to things that I really felt strongly that I needed. And so, after a little bit of time, I decided that I needed to kind of look for something that did fill that, and I needed that meaning. So I started a independent study of world religions, and I read every text I could get my hands on. I did all this research, looking for something that would feel familiar or feel like the right thing for me. And I finally found it. And when I did, it was less a case of learning something new and more a case of remembering something that I had already known, something that was kind of buried within me. I know that a lot of my ancestors, particularly on my mother's side, have come from like an English and Irish background. So
Mhm.
I've always felt very drawn to that kind of um, the indigenous kind of spirituality that is connected to Ireland and to England. I've always felt that way. And then as I continue to go, it became very clear to me that the uh, pagan roots were really where I found the meaning, in the pagan practices, and specifically the connection to nature. I sort of feel like nature is my church. And so the seasons are of big meaning to me. The full moon, the new moon, all of these things, and all of the animals, as we talked about earlier. Even the snake that was visiting my tap room yesterday. While I don't love it, this too has meaning to me. I kind of look at all of nature as an oracle. You know, and so that's really the background. The green level of witchcraft, which is really focused on nature and so forth, is another part that really resonated with me when I started reading it. But I kind of, I don't have a label. I sort of think of myself as eclectic. I kind of draw from different traditions and have made it my own, which is what I think that everyone should do, is make it their
Yeah, I
own, because
love
I
that.
don't think there's any one size fits all that fits everyone, right?
Sometimes it's easier to say to put a label on things because you know what direction you are supposed to go. But when you are in that label, it's more interesting if you can go outside the box to bring more colors into what you are doing, so to speak. So,
You know,
wow, I just say I'm blown. You blow my mind. You are you're so creative. You're really creative. Yeah.
Thank you. I just feel like everyone needs to have that freedom of spirituality. Everyone is welcome at my table. It doesn't matter what their spiritual belief structure is. I may not believe what they believe, but I would fight for their right to believe it,
Mhm.
right? I feel very strongly about that. And so, feeling that everyone should develop their own belief structure is something that, I've kind of passed along. I didn't, indoctrinate my own daughter with any specific belief structure. I said, pick something that really resonates with you. What do you feel in your heart? And I think that's really where we shine, is when we do that. When we really find that thing that lights us up.
Yeah, well, you find your own passion and you're working with your heart. So, yeah, definitely you have your own way to go there, and you are exploring the most what's right for you when you are using your heart chakra by yourself. But it's not a but. I see you a lot on Facebook because you are, as I said, you are very creative and you are having a lot of small, pop in that where you are talking mostly on your Moonbeam community, right?
Right.
Um, yeah. Well, you talk about a bit about you socializing on the community because I think that is a what I really want to say is that I like the engagement that you have with your followers that are members there, even though I can't be there live most of the time. I can scroll down and watch the recordings a bit after, and it brings me joy because you can see that you're loving what you are doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so that energy is pouring through the screen wherever we are, and that's the amazing thing with Zoom today, that we can reach each other. Oh, difficult words. But yeah. So is that something just pouring naturally for you to be
It,
like?
it is. It really is. So here's what I think, right? I just think that there's not enough positivity out there at all. And I really wanted to create that group rather,
Yeah.
as a place where people could come for positivity, create a safe space where they can connect with other folks, they can learn something, they can participate at whatever level they're comfortable with. And I do show up fairly often, as you know. I do, a live every week usually. It's usually some kind of a class or presentation or event. Like today, I'll go live to talk about the new moon, and I always do that for full moon. And what I love about working with the moon is that it gives you all this opportunity to work on the themes around it, which is making you better. It's a form of self-care. It's personal growth, it's wonderful, right? It gives you this opportunity to work on these things. And over the course of 12 months, you've worked on all these areas of your life. So I love that about it. And I really want to have that positive vibe, be something that, people can come there for. We all know that, social media can be tiresome, right? I mean, we
Oh
just
yeah.
know. We
Oh
talked a
yeah.
little earlier about how the things that you consume, including like television and news and all of these things, can have a real impact on us. In my house, there's not usually ever news or any kind of like the TV dramas that are all about terrible things. Like that's usually not on because I just don't want that kind of influence, you know. So I tend to now listen to, very Reiki type music or opera or something that's very uplifting to me. It's funny how we shift, right? But this positivity is something that I kind of worked hard for. I don't think I've shared with this with you before, but a decade ago, I got up every day hating my life. I literally
Oh
hated my
really?
life, and I said it out loud like every day. And I had depression and anxiety, and for a lot of my adult life, I was treated for depression, and I was miserable in my jobs, and it made a negative impact in being a parent or a partner. It was just this whole thing, and that downward spiral almost led me to actually take my own life. And that was the wake up call that, I slammed right straight into rock bottom. And I said to myself, you've got to do something different here. And at the same time, I was kind of battling with the food allergy thing and trying to get traction on that. And then I went through, some years where things were pretty lean. I didn't have very much, and it was kind of a struggle sometimes, financially speaking. And it all kind of came together in this truly wonderful way. I know that sounds terrible, like in some ways to say that this was all wonderful, but it kind of was, because what it did was it made me resilient, and it made me strong, and it made me realize that I did have control of what was happening and I could make changes. So on my 50th birthday is when I finally threw down the gauntlet and I said, you know what, enough is enough. Things have got to change, and this is what I want to do. And that was 5 years ago now. And in this 5 years, my focus has really been on creating harmony,
Mm.
creating peace and flow and joy. And Reiki has been a huge part of that. Coaching has been a big part of that. Working with the moon has been a big part of that. And my spirituality has been a big part of that. And that's why I love these things, because I know how powerful they can be to take me from, you know, barely surviving to completely thriving. Right now, it didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. So the me that I am today, and the way that I feel now, is so different from what it was, back then, right? And it really is a testament to how powerful using these things can be.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I think it's also right in time to be sharing this because a lot of us that are on social media usually present themselves as very happy people, and me myself, I am very happy. I have very easy to smile and think life is fun. But like you, I've had my moments, of course, and I think it's necessary for everybody to know that it's okay to have those moments, and it's not anything bad to go down, but you have to be aware that the more negativity that you are empowering yourself with, the lower the spiral will go, and you are responsible for your life. So you actually need to hit the what do you call it? Bottom rock.
Yeah, the bottom was rock bottom for me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Before it turns around, and most of the time, be aware that you are supposed to turn it around, and
I think that's true. I think you do have to get to that place where you finally are ready to say enough is enough is enough,
yeah.
because that is so powerful. When you finally make that decision.
Mm.
I work with a coach, and one of the things that she constantly says is about mindset. And thoughts are things, and whatever that energy is, that's what you're attracting. And
Yeah.
it was really hard for me to understand that I was actually creating some of this you know stuff I was dealing with, right? But since that time, I've also learned that now I can use those thoughts to bring in these wonderful things, to set my intentions with the new moon for the things that I want to create in my life is something I do now, regularly. And then I use the full moon to release anything that's not serving me. And that could include things like, forgiving myself or other people, that I feel like have, done something that has, in some way hurt me. Childhood can be a thing for a lot of us, and we can get rid of that, through those same practices. And I've used all of that to help myself. So I'm hoping that through my group, people are, maybe the positivity will be contagious, right? And they're inspired to either use these things or find something that really does work for them, because it may not be for them. It might be that they'll find something else that works better.
Mm. Well, you sure are inspiring, and I think people will get the message when you are talking. And then you mentioned another very, very important aspect that thoughts are actually alive too. You didn't say that, but I'm saying it, but you mentioned it. So they are alive, and whatever thing we are thinking is projecting out of a vibration, and it's law of attraction too. What you send out will attract somehow a similar wave of frequency. So yeah, the more positivity we have within ourselves, and it's also very important for me to feel that positivism is genuine, that it comes from a secure place within myself. So it's not a fake thing. So, but you could start to tell yourself that life is good, and suddenly you start to believe it too. Of course.
Well, and there's an intermediary step that, my coach shared this with me, and I needed this, this was something I needed. So if anyone listening can use this, please do, because this was powerful for me. So sometimes, we try to use like an affirmation, for that positive energy, and our brain is like calling us out and being like, that's not true. So what we can do is take like an intermediary step and say, I am learning to love myself, or I am learning to whatever it is, because our brain is like, oh yeah, I'll buy into that. Whereas if we say I am and then fill in the blank with something that our brain is going, no, it really, kind of backfires. Then those affirmations aren't working. Whereas if we kind of substitute and take that intermediary step and say I'm learning to, or I am, becoming, or whatever it might be, that kind of takes you to that middle ground, that can be a very powerful step in that journey.
Sure is. It sure is. Affirmation are good when we are using it. It's when like this Hinduist mantras that you are repeating for yourself. It has its own vibration. So yeah, it will certainly affect yourself. So if people want to get in touch with you, Karen, how should they get in touch with you?
Well, they can find me at shiftkitchen.com. They can also find me on Facebook at the Shift Kitchen Facebook page, or the Moonbeams and Tea group. If they do a little search for it on Facebook, they can probably find it, Moonbeams and Tea Community. And of course, they can send me a message on Facebook. Whatever works for them. I'm happy to hear from anyone, and I'll be sure to, get right back to you.
Oh, that's good. We will also post these links in the comment field when we are uploading this video, so they know where they can get in touch with you.
Yeah.
So, could you just give us as a closure here what is lying before you right now? If people want to join in some of your activities, you said you had a course of Reiki on to be, or just open up, or
Yeah, well, the Reiki class is only going to be open once a quarter. And so it'll open again in November for enrollment for anyone who's interested in that. And certainly they're welcome to join the Facebook group if they'd like to get a little acquainted before they would jump into a class. I also offer moon readings, which is kind of almost a hybrid between a reading and a masterclass, because I want people to be empowered to continue their own practice after they've been through one. And of course, in the group, there's lots of free stuff. I will probably be doing a Reiki day coming up before long, where anybody who wants to receive can. And so those are the things that are really at the core. There's uh, a coaching plan for next year. I'm not right now working with anyone, but for next year, I will again,
Oh,
start working with
interesting.
clients.
Yeah. So I need to ask you about the coaching thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So, uh, is it like you are tutoring, like a mentorship, or?
In a way, it is designed around helping folks go from, where they are to where they want to go. Helping through support and tools. It's a spiritual based kind of coaching. So it's probably going to resonate most with the folks who are in that spiritual space, or really want a coach that gets them. I find it easier to relate to someone who is a spiritual person, right?
Uh,
And so for anyone who's looking for a coach, I bring a little bit of the strategic piece of life coaching along with spiritual coaching. And then I also have a background with wellness coaching because of all that food stuff that we talked about.
yeah.
And so all of those things are, can be combined. But what I try to do is design it around the person. Everyone's needs are going to be a little bit different. And so we can design a package for them based on what they really want to do. And of course, everyone will have a little bit of a different goal.
Wow, sounds so interesting. So, wow, you have a full schedule here.
I do, yeah, and it sometimes
Unbelievable.
is a little much, right? We need to take a break, so I'm a big advocate for making sure that you get a little downtime. This afternoon, I'm going to get a little downtime and ride one of my horses. So,
Yeah, well, I love the way that you are presenting your ideas and that you actually are following them through. So I love it. And
yeah, I
I
live
love
it.
your
I
energy.
live what
I
I
just have to
preach
say
and
it.
teach, so to speak.
Yeah, I just have to say that I truly love your energy. You are so energetic, and you make me happy.
Oh, thank
I'm usually
you.
happy, but you make me happy. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's really good to have you here. Is there something you want to close this session down with? Is
Well,
this?
I want to say thank you to you, of course. It's been such a pleasure to sit with you today. This has been lovely. And I also want to send out so much love and peace and flow and joy and all of those things to everyone who's listening today. I am so grateful that you've taken the time out to watch. And so I'll close with that.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Karen, and wish you the best luck with everything that you are taking on in the future, and you are doing a beautiful work, and yeah, looking forward to follow you
Oh,
in the future.
oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So if you are interested in Karen and her work, please check out the comment field because we are posting the links to her pages there when we are uploading this video. So thank you for being here, and we will get back in a couple of weeks with the upfollowing interview with another healer and tarot guide. Thank you again, and blessings for being here. Bye. So